This is my desire to honour you. Wonderful words. Good morning. I was taken down a coal mine once, and the bloke I was with told me to turn my helmet light off. The darkness consumed me. It really did. Now, I'm not suggesting that Satan lives in coal mines, but I can imagine hell being like that. I stood there afraid to move, slowly becoming disorientated. My balance became affected, and I fumbled quickly for the switch to turn my light on and bring me back to reality. But just before I turned my light back on, however, I caught a flicker of light, just a flicker, way down the end of the drift. Hundreds of metres away, just a glimmer through the dark. My orientation became normal. My balance, it reset itself. Just a glimmer of light was all that was needed, and I was safe. It seemed to me that the relationship Jesus makes between light and dark is very unambiguous indeed. In Matthew chapter 5, it says, "You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives off light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." There was a young girl with a very sad heart. She spoke to her employer, the owner of the factory. She said, "I cannot stick it out any longer. I am a Christian and all I get is nothing but taunts and sneers. It is more than I can stand. I'm sorry, but I must hand you my notice to resign." The owner listened patiently and quietly to her, then said, "You are the only light I have in this factory." She thought about it for a few minutes, turning over in her mind the words of Jesus. She went back to the factory determined to let her light shine. Before long, she was able to lead 9 of her workmates to Jesus. Now, I've been told on several occasions that I wasn't very bright. So obviously, I thought this passage must have been meant for somebody else. But when you think of it, no matter how dim you think your light is, it can still penetrate the darkest of darkness. So what does it mean to let our light shine? Well, firstly, our light represents our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Our relationship to God is our most important relationship. God and Moses talked face to face in the tent of meeting, just as friends do. Why did Moses find such favour with God? Well, it certainly was not because he was perfect, gifted or powerful. Rather, it was because God chose Moses, and Moses in turn relied wholeheartedly on God's wisdom and direction. Friendship with God was a true privilege to Moses, out of reach for other Hebrews. Now, most certainly, Moses had the credentials to work for God and to do the work that God had planned for him, but still he needed to rely wholeheartedly on God. Now, we have the credentials for what God has lined up for us, but it needs that extra strong relationship with him if we're going to see it through. No two relationships are the same. My relationship with God is different to yours. There are, however, things in our relationships that we have in common. And one, we can both talk to God. There was a little girl who every night threw one of her shoes right underneath her bed out of reach. Her mother, intrigued by this, asked her what she was doing. Well, she said, "Every morning I have to get down on my knees and retrieve my shoe. This puts me in the perfect position to talk to God." Prayer is a fundamental part of our relationship with God. Now, I feel a bit hopeless when it comes to praying out loud in a group, and I tremble at the thought of being asked. But at home, in my room, I have no trouble at all. Pray continually, Paul urges the Thessalonians. Paul, of course, did not mean that we should abandon everything and devote ourselves solely to prayer. His own life included preaching, witnessing, socialising, writing and even tent making. He is telling us, however, that our lives must be saturated with prayer. This continual praying, however, does not cover all times of prayer. There are also those special hours that we must spend struggling through a problem with God, pouring out our deepest feelings to Him, praising and thanking Him for who He is, or just meditating and listening. The point is that prayer is the very lifeblood of our relationship with God and must be a vital part of our lives, not just a ritual, a way to begin and end meetings or an emergency kit. We can and should pray continually about everything. And two, we can ask God for things. In 1 Samuel, it says, "So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, and she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow and said, Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look upon the affliction of your maidservant and remember me and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, and I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, no razor shall come upon his head." So they rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And so it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, "Because I have asked for him from the Lord." Now there is a more recent version of this story to which I can testify. See, back in 1972, after 3 miscarriages, a young mother got down on her knees and prayed the exact same prayer as Hannah. The only difference was that his name was Jason, not Samuel, and he was my son. And thirdly, we can both call to him in our distress. In 2 Samuel, it says, "The sorrows of Sheol surrounded me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, and he cried out to my God. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry entered his ears." God hears our cries in times of trouble and distress. He can distinguish our cries above all the sounds of the earth. And secondly, our light represents the effects of our life on others. An ordinance of the council in Falaise in France provided that no citizen shall go out at night without a lantern. You know, do we take our lantern with us whenever we go? Do we wave it around so others can see it? Does it attract the attention? We hope it will. A supplement to the ordinance read, "No citizen shall go out at night without a candle in his lantern." Now, when you consider it, a lantern is not much good without a candle. And with a candle, the potential for others to see on the darkest of streets is greatly improved. But then you see, it came necessary to pass another supplement. It said, "No citizen shall go out at night without a lighted candle in his lantern." Now, I don't think it is only the French who seem to be a bit slow at times, but it is our candle, or is our candle ready for our encounter with others? Our light represents the effect of our life on others. Our lamp doesn't help people to see. If our lamp doesn't help people to see, it is useless. Does our life show other people how to find God and how to live for him? If not, we must ask what causes our light to have been extinguished. Complacency, resentment, stubbornness of heart, disobedience. There are a host of things that creep into our lives that should keep God's light from shining through us to others. We must always try to shine for the glory of God. And thirdly, our light represents our growing in our knowledge of Christ. The light of Jesus Christ is revealed to us, not hidden. But we may not be able to see or to use all of that truth right now. Only as we put God's teaching into practice will we understand and see more of the truth. The truth is clear, but our ability to understand is imperfect. As we obey, we will grow and sharpen our vision and increase our understanding. James chapter 1, it says, "But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and is not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in the mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does." And fourthly, Jesus is the light. Jesus Christ is the creator of life, and his life brings light to humanity. In his light we see ourselves as we really are, sinners in need of a saviour. When we follow Jesus, the true light, we can avoid walking blindly and falling into sin. He lights the path ahead of us so we can see how to live. He removes the darkness of sin from our lives. If you have allowed the light, or have you allowed the light of Jesus to shine in your life? Let Christ guide your life, and you'll never need to stumble in darkness. And fifthly, and I think most importantly, our light is a reflection of Jesus Christ. We, like John the Baptist, are not the source of God's light. We merely reflect the light. Jesus Christ is the true light. He helps us see our way to God and shows us how to walk along the way. But Christ has chosen to reflect his life through his followers to an unbelieving world, perhaps because unbelievers are not able to bear the full blazing glory of his light firsthand. The word witness indicates our role as reflectors of Christ's light. We are never to present ourselves as the light to others, but are always to point them to Christ, the light. Rudyard Kipling soon wearied of life in the great city and sought for himself a little house on the side of a valley. After he had been there for some time, he went for a walk across the valley to the other side. At a lonely farmhouse, he came across a woman. She was shy because few strangers came that way, but presently she said a memorable thing that the great storyteller never forgot. She said, "Be you the new light across the valley yonder? You don't know what a comfort you've been to me this winter. You aren't ever going to shroud them up, are you?" Matthew chapter 5, we read, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavour, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men." You are the salt of the earth. Mankind, lying in ignorance and wickedness, were as a vast heap ready to putrefy, but Christ sent forth his disciples by their lives and doctrines to season it with knowledge and with grace. If they are not such as they should be, they are as salt that has lost its savour. If a man can take up the profession of Christ and yet remain graceless, no other doctrine, no other means can make him profitable. You know, we must seek to be influenced by Christ-like models. Now, I must admit, I'm influenced by the writings of men like Winston Churchill, a fellow called Guy Gibson, Sir Keith Park, through reading their books. Men who saw the job through at the best of their ability when the odds were stacked against them. And I guess I'm more influenced than them than I am Billy Graham, but one man that has deeply influenced me is John Newton. You know, we must rise above the influence of poor models. We must seek better ones. Jesus Christ provides a perfect model. No matter how you were raised or who has influenced your life, you can move beyond those limitations by taking Christ as your example and consciously trying to live as he did. And our influence on others will be judged of God. The story is told of a visitor who was once staying with Mrs. Wesley when Charles was a little boy, and Charles came in and asked his mother a question, which his mother patiently answered. In 5 minutes he came back and asked the same question, which his mother answered patiently as she'd done the first time. The visitor said, "Why do you waste time in answering that troublesome boy's question 7 times? "Well," said Mrs. Wesley, "because 6 times was not enough." She had learned patience in the school of Jesus Christ. We can only imagine what an influence she had on that great preacher. Zechariah was an evil king because he encouraged Israel to sin by worshipping idols. Sin in our life is serious, but it is even more serious to encourage others to disobey God. We are responsible for the way we influence others. Beware of double sins, one that not only hurt us, but also hurt others by encouraging them to sin. In Romans 1, chapter 1, verse 32, it says, "They are fully aware of God's death penalty for those who do these things. Yet they go right ahead and do them anyway, and worse yet, they encourage others to do them too." There was once a man who had a dream that he went to hell, and when asked to give an account of what he had seen, if there were flames there and suffering there and wrecked and malign creatures with whom he had to associate, and if the place resounded with oaths and blasphemy, he said yes. But there was something far worse. I was compelled to face my influence. I knew that I deserved punishment, for I had scorned and rejected Jesus Christ. But my greatest pain was to see what the effect of my life had been upon others. We must evaluate influences by biblical standards. People tend to believe lies that reinforce their own selfish personal beliefs. Today, more than ever, we need to be careful about the input we allow to form our beliefs. With television, music, movies and the rest of the media often presenting sinful lifestyles and unwholesome values, we find ourselves constantly bombarded by attitudes and beliefs that are totally opposed to the Bible. We must be ever alert to things we allow to form our opinions. The Bible is the only standard of truth. Evaluate all other opinions in the light of its teachings. I take the work of preparing my sermons very, very seriously. If there are things I can't understand, I leave them out until I can confidently prove that God can back me up. Martin Luther King said this. He said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." So what happens when our light shines brightest and we love unconditionally? You'll not find the name Elizabeth Palenko listed among the earthly saints. You must not expect to find her wearing a halo of heavenly radiance. A shabby black habit is all that marks her out. Who is she? Well, she is a wealthy young girl from a privileged land-holding family, a student of the Women's University of St. Petersburg, and an atheist. But the years pass quickly, and she becomes a mayor of her town. She moves to Paris, her heart filled with strange triumphs and conflicting griefs. She is finding her way to a living faith. She has founded an abbey, though clearly she is no ordinary Russian Orthodox religious. When onlookers find courage to question her about it, her answer is always the same. "I must go my way. I am for the suffering people." Morning after morning, she is in the market buying cheap food for the poor that she feeds. The very poor, the Russian refugees without country, claim or future, call her Mother Maria. Her shabby black habit becomes shabbier, her shoes more worn. Refugees suffering tuberculosis are lying in a filthy hovel on the banks of the Seine with syphilitic wrecks that the police have picked up. She has no money in her market bag except for a few francs, but she is rich in the love that can work miracles for her Lord. She opens an old chateau for the poor wretches of the riverbank. Time hastens on, and Hitler's armies are surging in like a flood. Her roof is a shelter for hunted Jews and for women and children, but time is running out. The Gestapo hammer on her door. They seem a little taken aback when they see that their prisoner is only a frail woman. They do not understand a battle in which the only weapon is love, but the deed for which they come must be done, and Mother Maria is handed off with others to the concentration camp at Ravensbrück. As day follows day, her hours are full. 2.5 years of what seems timeless time passed by, and she is now older and bearing the marks of pain. In the camp, a new building is raised. The prisoners are told it will contain baths, but in time the awful truth dawns upon them. One morning there is an order, and a queue of 20 women is lined up. One of the doomed is a young Jewish girl who has become hysterical. A strong arm goes around her shoulder and turns her away out of the queue. In her place is one who cannot now keep out of that queue. And so, in line with the rest, clothed only in shabby black, a saint passes through the doors to death and to victory. It is the 30th of March, 1945, Good Friday. Now, our influence on the world will probably be not the same as Abraham Lincoln, Billy Graham or Winston Churchill, or the greatest songwriter of all time, John Newton. But our influence on those we bring, or our influence on those we take the time to walk alongside, might be just enough to bring them into the light and the lasting relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Now, unfortunately, our influence will fade in time, and in a couple of generations from now, we'll just be another name on the branch of a family tree. But our light will leave an enduring influence on those we spend time with now. The longer the time we spend with them, the more enduring our influence and our reflected light will be. It will then be up to them to pass their influence on to others. And so this relay will continue. And maybe one day I will cross the great divide and someone will come up to me and say, "I remember you. You made the best sausage rolls in Australia." John 1 says, "Life itself was in him, and this life gives light to everyone. The light shines through the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it." Let me close in prayer. Heavenly Father, only your light is eternal, and we are but a reflection of that light. Your word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. Help us to walk in your light so darkness will not overtake us. Rid us of the things that enter our lives and distract us from reflecting your love and understanding. Hear our pleas for help and set us on the right path through the light of your word. Be with us as we endeavour to reach out to save the lost and allow our relationship with you to be one of glory only for you. In Jesus' name, amen.
So we are to let our light shine. And that light can only shine if we are not just hearers of the word, but doers also. Because for us to shine our light, we have to act in the way that God wants.